वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह आप जी सिख चैनल वेख रहे हो 840 ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ and throughout the world wide web on the internet and you're watching the Sikh ethics program ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ program ਹੈ ਬਹੁਤ special program ਹੈ it's a very special program that we're bringing today and we're filming this in the world's biggest media corporation the BBC. The journalist from the BBC, Chris Rogers, who we have with us today, and we're going to interview him. They've been watching the Sikh ethics program over the last year, and some of the issues that we raised on there, particularly the sexual grooming one, they've picked up on that, and they themselves are making a documentary with the Sikh community. So that's where the program, ਅੱਜ ਦਾ program ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਇਹ ਆਪਾਂ ਸਾਰੀ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਡਾਕੂਮੈਂਟਰੀ BBC ਤਿਆਰ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਆ ਸੈਕਸ਼ੂਅਲ ਗਰੂਮਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਐਥਿਕਸ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਸਿੱਖ ਚੈਨਲ ਤੇ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਐਥਿਕਸ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੰਟੈਕਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੀ ਡਾਕੂਮੈਂਟਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹਨੇ ਤਿਆਰ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ 3 ਤਰੀਕ ਨੂੰ ਖਰੇ 2 ਤਰੀਕ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਆ ਟੈਲੀ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨੀ ਆ ਸੋ I'd like to say hi Chris and welcome to the Sikh channel, but we're in the BBC studios here.
Yeah, you're in my territory now, but I'm also in your territory. So
yeah, I mean, we've spoken in Punjabi. Obviously, you won't understand, and this is going out mainly to a Punjabi audience, a Punjabi-speaking audience. But I've told them about the sexual grooming side. If you could tell us a bit about yourself first, and you can start anywhere you like.
Gosh, it's a long story, but this is my 27th year in broadcasting. I started very young, 15, and a lot of people might recognise me from News Round, the children's news programme, which was my first big job. But throughout my career, as well as newsreading, I've made a lot of films.
Right.
Particularly human rights films, injustice,
right.
often exposing criminals or even governments, sadly. Right. And I think the films that I'm probably best known for is unveiling horrific cruelty in institutions for abandoned children in Eastern Europe. And last year I made a film that involved the Sikh community.
Okay.
And it involved Faujis, as you call them, foot soldiers,
right.
who come from India to Britain to make big money. They're tricked by the traffickers. They're told the streets are paved with gold. And then, of course, they don't find any work. They end up living rough on the streets. They're unable to get home because they don't have any travel ID. And I managed to trace a lot of their families back in India, in Punjab. So before I met you, I was already very, very well aware of how accommodating the Sikh community are, how
right.
lovely families are, how hospitable families are, and I became increasingly aware of some of the issues in the Sikh community in the UK. But this was perhaps the most shocking.
So, if I what was the need? I mean, is there a personal need or just? I would just say, what was the need for you to sort of approach us and then make this documentary?
Well, I think as a human, I was as shocked to find out what's been going on in the Sikh community as our audience will be when they watch the documentary.
Right.
And as the audience of this channel will be when they see the film. The fact that children are often silenced in this world is what drives me as a journalist to do the films that I do.
Great.
So when I find silenced children, this sounds very evangelical of me, but I'm not being evangelical, but I do think every victim deserves a voice. So, and that's what drives me. So when I found out that particularly girls in the Sikh community were not seeing justice or were not be able to tell their story, make their allegations,
right.
I became very concerned, and so that's when we approached you.
So basically, it's to raise awareness on their plight, is it?
It's to give victims a voice.
Okay.
Victims who haven't had a voice, and the film, I hope, because there's always glorious side effects to your work, and one side effect I would like to see is that victims of sexual grooming in your community feel they are able to come forward, they are able to speak, there is help there, justice and, more importantly, safety can be found. And at the moment, I think there's a lot of victims in a lot of communities, but particularly it seems the Sikh community, who feel they have no one to turn to.
So Chris, when you first approached this project, and now we're towards the end of the project, were you shocked with what you found, or was it something you were expecting, or is it a totally different, whole new ball game? What you?
Well, Mohan, I think you and I have learnt a lot in making this film. I think we all have, because the nature of investigative journalism is you don't know what the story exactly is. You know there's an issue, but you don't know what the narrative is, you don't know where it's going to take you. And as we met victims, we began to see a picture develop. And I have a lot of mixed emotions about the film, and I think the viewers will as well. It's not all hopeless because of people like yourself and the Sikh Awareness Society.
Thank you.
But there's still an awful lot of work to be done, particularly in this country, between agencies cooperating with each other, and more importantly, cooperating with the community and having an understanding of the community. Prejudice and racism is a huge problem, but also the Sikh community itself, we've discovered, need to do more to help these victims as well. Rather than hide it, you need to be brave and come forward and bring people to justice and stop other potential victims from falling into the hands of these men.
I mean, you did speak to a lot of the community from different parts of the UK. What was your reaction to going actually into the community and talking to people at grassroots level then?
Well, first of all, I think it was a very brave decision for families, yourself, and the Sikh community in general, to let a middle-class white guy come in with a film crew and start filming a community. Because one of the problems I think police and other agencies have is understanding the Sikh religion, the Sikh community, how they operate, how they live, what they believe in. And there is a fear and a misunderstanding between police and agencies and the Sikh community when it comes to this issue. So it took a lot of time to kind of get to know people, to earn their trust, to bond with them, and for myself to get an understanding of what it is they were telling me. It's complicated. It's complicated because there are Sikh families and victims of sexual grooming gangs who do want to come forward, who do want justice, who do want help, but are terrified to do so, or feel it's just going to be a waste of time. What also makes it complicated is that I've met police officers and social workers who do want to help, but aren't coming across victims. They have a problem with it being underreported. And then you meet families who have stepped forward, who have gone to the police and agencies, and their cries for help are being silenced and ignored. So it's a very complicated picture, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done from within the community, but also between the police and agencies to solve this issue.
And you think the documentary will bring all that to light and all the issues that you just sort of spoken about?
Yeah.
You think?
Look, you know, there are elements of this film that you, the Sikh community, are not going to like. There are elements of this film, the police, social services, the government, the Children's Commissioner, are not going to like. What investigative journalism does is it gives society an opportunity to look at itself. And it doesn't always like what it sees. But instead of complaining and being angry and feeling exposed, look at what we found, discuss it, and find a solution. Because that's what my job is to do as a journalist. I haven't gone into this film as an agenda. The BBC never has an agenda with these films. We film what we hear and see and uncover and get evidence of. We present it to the public, and we hope it creates debate. And of course, I wouldn't be human if I didn't say I hope it creates change. But as I keep saying, it's the Sikh community, as well as the police and government and agencies, that all need to come together and work together and The most important thing, as you know in your work with the Sikh Awareness Society, Mohan, is to believe a victim. A victim needs to be believed, and once they're believed, then the ball can start rolling in helping them, bringing them to safety, and maybe bringing the men that have sexually abused them to justice.
To justice. Okay, Chris, can you actually give us a snapshot of what the film is actually investigating?
We are all now very aware, and thankfully aware, that sexual grooming is a huge problem. And that groomers come from all communities and victims come from all communities. But what this film does is it focuses on a victim that we don't read about in the newspapers, that we don't see on news reports, that we don't see in court. And that's Sikh victims, young Sikh girls.
Bradford, Rochdale, Telford, Oxford. In all of these recent high-profile cases, gangs of men have been convicted of grooming young and vulnerable white girls. But there is another group of victims whose stories haven't been told.
I felt used and abused, like a piece of rubbish.
Behind the doors of Britain's Sikh community, girls speak for the very first time about how they too have been groomed and subjected to sexual abuse. Jaswinder from Leicester was only 13 when a man began to groom her.
He seemed like a really sweet guy. I started skipping school just to go out with him. Then he'd buy me stuff and pay for my stuff. And then he bought me a phone to stay in contact with him. He made me feel like I was the centre of attention.
He spent weeks slowly gaining Jaswinder's trust, but he had a hidden agenda.
He took me out to a hotel and then gave me a drink. I didn't know what happened after that.
The next morning, Jaswinder woke up naked. Her drink had been spiked. The man she trusted had taken obscene photos of her and threatened to show them to her parents unless she agreed to have sex with other men. Jaswinder can never speak about her ordeal. In her community, family honour is paramount. Her family have warned her to stay silent. But there is one person who Jaswinder can turn to. He's not a counsellor or a police officer, but he's doing what he can to help girls like her.
We're from the Sikh Awareness Society, and our main mission really is to raise awareness on a terrible subject, sexual grooming.
Mohan Singh from Birmingham set up the Sikh Awareness Society in the 90s after growing concern within his community that girls as young as 9 were being sexually abused.
It is a massive problem. Just imagine you got a 24-hour helpline, which, to be honest, never stops ringing.
So this film investigates why we don't see those kind of cases in court, why we don't read about them in the papers, when we know from organisations like yourself that there are potentially hundreds of Sikh girls that over the last 20 years have been exploited by groups of men for sexual services. And when you start asking that one question, why are we not reading about them, why are we not hearing from them, it uncovers a very uncomfortable story, I think, for all involved, and poses more questions.
Right, and how many victims did you, throughout the documentary, how many victims did you actually get to speak and listen to their stories? Well,
it's a difficult film to make when the subject of the film is that victims feel they can't talk about what they've gone through, are scared of coming forward, when you have families that want to protect the family honour and don't really want to talk about it, so it's very difficult to then get them to talk about it. And thankfully, the victims and the families that we did film with saw the importance in coming forward and talking about what their daughters have gone through, or indeed the victims felt willing to come forward and saw the importance of coming forward and talking about what they've gone through. And we filmed with 2 families and several victims. All very different outcomes, all very different circumstances. One involving the only case we know of that actually got to court and put 6 men behind bars. The other, a girl who ended up having to move thousands of miles away from a community for her own safety, but also at her parents' wishes, and is still waiting and hoping for justice one day. And then we met a family who whose daughter doesn't want help. She doesn't want to be rescued.
Right.
She doesn't want justice. She's so groomed, she's brainwashed into the situation that she's in, but her parents can see that she's groomed. They've started piecing all the evidence together and unfortunately aren't getting any help or support. So it was very mixed stories, but one common factor. The pattern that we came across is very similar to the pattern of grooming you see among all victims in all communities across the country. A girl's befriended. She thinks she's in a loving relationship. She's given gifts. She's treated nicely. And then it all changes.
So you're definitely finding the same pattern within the Sikh community as you found it outside?
Absolutely. Although in some cases, not all, but in some cases the men are actually lying about their religion and what community they're from as well. And that's pretty unique, I think, to Sikh victims, which is another big issue and a very difficult issue for us to cover. But that also came up as well. So it's a very complex issue. With one very simple answer, and that is for organisations like the Sikh Awareness Society, for families, parents, victims, police, social services, to start working more closely together, bringing these people to justice and bringing victims to safety. There has to be some kind of general understanding of each other of what is needed. And we are finding that is beginning to happen. And the Leicester court case and the girl that did come to you, you went to the police investigated, arrested several people, 6 of them pleaded guilty in court. It shows it can be done, there is hope, but parents have got to let their daughters come forward. Their daughters have got to feel they are able to come forward, that they can trust the police. The police have got to believe them first, investigate second. That's really important, not presume that it's just some kind of racial or religious dispute between 2 communities, but actually investigate it and see what the situation is and work more closely with the community. And that is beginning to happen.
Chris, how long has it taken for you guys to film this documentary?
Well, we first approached you, I think, about a year ago, about this time last year. And the most important thing was to build relationships with victims and families and yourself and understand what the issue is and to gain your trust. And for us to make preliminary inquiries. And that took months. I mean, it took a long time. It's a very sensitive film to make.
True.
You're filming real lives. That's not easy. And you've got to be very aware that there are ramifications on those real lives if you get it wrong. So we spent months just making sure that we got it right and we represented everybody fairly. And then it's been several months of filming all over the United Kingdom, because cases are from all over the United Kingdom and abroad as well, of course.
Okay, any difficulties in making this documentary?
I think the difficulties is turning the camera off, packing up and heading home, having just heard the testimony of a victim. That's the difficulty. To believe that a human being can do that to another human being, let alone a man to a child, is disgusting. It's horrific to hear.
So you were finding it hard to switch off, really?
Yeah, well, it just, it makes you feel you are doing the right thing and that you are giving these victims a voice and you are raising awareness of a very important issue. So that helps you get over hearing such horrifying stories. But how you do it day in, day out with the many victims that you meet, Mohan, I just don't know. I mean, it's what these girls are going through is shocking, but it can no longer be brushed under the rug. It can no longer be silenced. It can no longer be ignored, because these are real victims. These are young lives being destroyed.
Will this documentary, when people see this documentary, will there be any hope or any solutions in this for a way forward for the community and obviously authorities? And
well, my job as a journalist, the BBC's job is to expose issues, not solve them.
Right.
The glorious side effect of films like this is that sometimes solutions are found.
With a debate, when it ignites a debate in the community. I'm
sure it will ignite debate across many communities and government agencies and police agencies. And a lot of that debate is already happening, which is a very positive sign. And I think it will make people realise that this is an issue that does affect every single community.
Right.
It's not Asian Muslim men targeting white girls, vulnerable girls. Every girl in this country is a potential victim. And every community produces its fair share of men that want to exploit girls. But what this particular film does is highlight a particular issue for a particular victim who appears to be a victim of men from a particular community.
Right.
Which makes it difficult for agencies and makes it difficult for the victim and their families as well to report. And what hope there is that one case in Leicester where 6 men, so overwhelmed by the evidence brought before them, pleaded guilty. There were community tensions. Both communities dealt with it through the police and brought peace to the streets of Leicester. That victim has seen justice. She is now able to pick up the pieces of her life and slowly move forward. But all that required cooperation across 2 communities, the police and various agencies as well. If that could be repeated in every part of the United Kingdom,
it'd be a much better place.
It would be a better place.
Okay, to the viewers out there, to the Sikh community, you're on the Sikh channel, on the Sikh Ethics program. Why should everyone... When's the film coming out, by the way?
So Monday, the 2nd of September, 7:30,
on
BBC Inside Out. There'll also be reports on BBC News, on the 6 o'clock news, on BBC One, and BBC Radio 4 and 5 Live as well. The BBC, as you say, is a massive organisation, so it'll be a big story on Monday.
So it'll be all over. So why should the Sikh community and the Hindu community or any Punjabi-speaking community watch this documentary?
Because
in your own words.
Because the next victim could be your daughter, your niece, your granddaughter. That's why they should watch it.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's been a pleasure working with you for the last year.
My pleasure too.
Hope whatever your intentions were in the film, we can bring it out on camera and definitely make a change.
Thanks, man.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. That was Chris... I keep forgetting his second name.
Rogers.
Chris Rogers, journalist from the BBC. We've been working together for over a year now, and they've to make a documentary about sexual grooming. कि जेड़ियां अपनियां बच्चियां दी बाहर जेड़े कई लोग इज्जत लुट रहे अपनियां बच्चियां दे उत्ते डॉक्यूमेंट्री तैयार कीती आ। साल हो गया इस डॉक्यूमेंट्री बनाउंदियां नूं। UK वाइड ये आपां कवर किया फ्रॉम लीड्स तो लग के ब्रैडफोर्ड तो लग के बर्मिंघम दे विच लंडन तक जिहड़े केसिस सीगे वो आपां सारे फिल्म कीते आ ते इन्हां ने भी बड़ी अपनी इन्वेस्टमेंट की आ, टाइम पाया इस चीज़ दे विच। एक बड़ा खराब जा इशू आ जिहड़ा कि असीं समझदे आ कि BBC ने भी समझा कि ये इशू जिहड़ा आ बड़ा गंदा आ इशू आ कि इनू सामने लियाइए, सारी दुनिया विच लियाइए। सो जदों सामने आऊगा आपां उस चीज़ नू टैकल कर सकदे आ। सो इहदे इस फिल्म दे विच कई चीज़ां इदां दियां भी होणीਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੌੜੀਆਂ ਲੱਗਣੀਆਂ, पर ਉਹ ਜੇ ਕੌੜੀਆਂ ਲੱਗਣਗੀਆਂ ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਮੇਰਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਥੋੜੀ ਜਾਗੂਗੀ। ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਐਡੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਵਰਲਡ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਡਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕੋਆਪਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ BBC ਦਾ, ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸੀ ਫਿਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਕੇ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਆ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਐਕਸਪੋਜ਼ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਵੇ ਸੋ ਦੈਟ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਸਾਰੇ ਪੱਖੋਂ help mile, justice mile. So once again, I'd like to thank Chris Rogers. Thank you very much from the BBC. Thank you very much for inviting us in today, and hope it all goes well on the September the 2nd. And whatever aims and objectives we had in this, I hope they all come out and we can. It works well for the community. Everybody at large. So thank you very much for watching the Sikh Ethics program, and we'll be with you next week, same time, same place. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.